Howdy, folks. Happy Thursday. Well, let's just say I'm as tired as I am. I'm surprised that I knew that it was Thursday instead of Wednesday. I have to say, and this is, first world problems. I go to, cover the Leaf games up in Toronto. It's always an early start for me, and, taking the train up to Toronto, which is much more efficient than driving all the way up. But I check the train schedule last night after the game, and it was a 7:30 start because apparently, it was on NHL Network. I don't know if that was a factor, but it was a 7:30 start, which is unusual. Usually it's a 7:00 start. And after post game and interviews and things of that nature, it was about 10:40, and I get to Union Station, which is right next to the arena. And the schedule that I had checked during the day said that there was every half hour. Well, the train that was the next one only went one stop. It didn't go all the way to where I needed to go. So I had to wait an entire hour to get down to where my car was. And I got home at 2 a.m. So I'm operating on fumes today. So, Russ, you have to carry me at least for the pre-show.
Did you write your story before you got home, or did you have to write?
Yeah, no, I wrote basically during the game and put the finishing touches at the end of the game.
Yeah, that's smart.
Yeah.
So let's talk about YouTube TV and MLB TV. So as of January 31st, the contract ran out, and I can't see it being anything other than greed on MLB's part, on their part, because they were charging $130 for a year or $25 a month. Mm-hmm. And, in this era, that's pretty good money for someone to pay outside of what they're paying YouTube TV, which is whatever, $90, $70, whatever it is. So YouTube said we were trying to get this deal done and before it expired, and it wasn't possible. And we'll talk about this later again with the NHL's, their whole thing. But as far as baseball goes, and this is just the way I look at it, Kev, you could only milk your fan base for so much, right, and they can't afford to lose viewers. Like, I don't know if Rob Manfred ever looks at it like, I wonder if we're charging too much. Because, again, that day is coming. It's really getting close now.
Yeah. No, you're right. And, those are the kind of issues that give everybody gray hairs. So it's I wouldn't even want to predict where that one's going.
Like, just as an example, like preseason, you get these emails for tickets. And I went and bought tickets for a Phillies Met game. The Sunday day game cost more than the Saturday night game, which cost less than the Friday night game, and the Thursday night game was the cheapest, right? So all of them had different pricing. By the time it's over, a Sunday day game is $90 for 2 tickets, and I'm not like on the field or anything close to it. Like, you're getting to the point where you are pricing out baseball fans.
Yeah. I mean, and baseball has always historically been the least expensive of the major sports.
Right.
And, the days of, 50-cent bleacher tickets that I, saw when I was a kid are long gone. But, it's still cheaper to go to a baseball game than to, other sports.
But not by a lot anymore.
No, I do know that in Toronto, and people in Toronto would know the 500 level tickets, which by the way, that's where like Jose Canseco hit the home run in the playoffs. You're basically in a different zip code. They were selling those tickets at like $5 or $10 because they're so far away that you're better off watching it from one of the condos along Lakeshore Boulevard. But no, I mean, even bleachers at Yankee Stadium are $60, $70.
That's crazy, yeah.
Well, yeah, but what baseball has turned into is like what we did last summer. It's like people coming in from out of town for 1 or 2 games. Like, I can't. I'm sure the figure is out there in terms of Yankee Stadium, how many 81 game season ticket holders they have. I'll bet you anything it's less than 20,000. And then
for sure, yeah.
And most of them are either quarter season tickets or half season tickets, or people who buy 4 or 5 games. Like I'll go this summer for 1 game. But it's, I mean, I don't know who the people out there who have the ability to go to 41 hockey games or 41 basketball games. It's unbelievable. It's a commitment.
I think it's mostly corporate,
Yes.
That buy those, and businesses, and they give them out. And, I also know, I've never been involved in any of them, but I know people that, are part of, 8 people that buy 1 season ticket, and then they hold a draft and, parcel out the tickets, that way, which is to me a cool way to do it.
Well, I mean, that is a cool way.
Well, okay, a few years ago, after the lockout, I bought Sabres season tickets because they introduced a variable pricing plan. And, of course, the Toronto games, and this is before I was a reporter, so I didn't have access. It was basically 25% of the price to get season tickets for a Leaf game rather than buying them individually. And all I did was I sold all the other tickets, or most of the other tickets, at cost to my friends. So everybody saved, and I got my money back, and I got to go to the Leaf games at a reduced price. And then when they made the playoffs those 2 years, I sold the tickets that way. It was great until the Sabres started stinking, and then nobody wanted the tickets, and then I stopped. But that's the risk you take if it's a team that is not good. People don't want to go to see that team. And only in the last year or two, have the Sabres been getting people back because they're young and exciting. But for 5, 6, 7 years, Kev, that was the story in Buffalo, that even to split the tickets 10, 12 ways was tough.
Yeah, I mean, and again, that just speaks.
Uh-oh. Kev froze up there for a sec.
Oh, yeah. I see that. I also saw, and I didn't read it, The Athletic has an article on inventive new ways for young people to get season tickets for baseball. Like, good luck with that one.
Yeah, you froze there for a sec, Kev.
Yeah, no, I know. I'm just trying to. I think I got too many things up.
Yeah,
Good luck with that program. Trying to get young people to buy season tickets for Major League Baseball.
Yeah, that's not what they dedicate funds for.
No.
So I mean, but that's the beauty of the NFL. Like, we've chronicled here many times that in my lifetime the Lions have won 1 playoff game in 67 years. 1 playoff game. It's just really remarkable. And yet, I am a season ticket holder of the Lions, and I can still, even under the worst of years, well, I shouldn't say it. The pandemic was tough, but anytime with the pandemic, I can still sell those at a, if I push it, I can, get more money than I paid for them.
Well, and that's the beauty of the NFL in the sense that their schedule is 2 or 3 preseason games, and for a season ticket holder, 8 games, maybe 9.
Yeah.
And that's it. That's a reasonable commitment. It's every Sunday.
Yeah. The other thing too that a lot of people don't realize if they're not a regular game going, in the NFL too, you count on the away fans.
Yes.
Buying your tickets. Like, I get top dollar for Chicago Bears fans, Packers fans when they want to come and watch a game in Detroit, because they're, if you're committed to that trip, you don't mind spending $200 for $115 ticket or whatever. So,
Buffalo fans travel well. Green Bay, Pittsburgh, they all.
Yeah.
If those teams are coming to town and you want to sell tickets, no problem.
Yeah, that's why when you're a season ticket holder, you hate to see like Jacksonville or somebody like that just hasn't been around long enough to have the away crowd. So.
That makes sense. All
right, let's get started. Hello, Hockey World. Today is Thursday, February 2nd, 2023.
I'm Russ Cohen from Sportsology.
Kevin Allen.
And I'm Punxsutawney Phil. Oh, sorry. I'm Michael Agello, and this is the Hockey Buzzcast here on HockeyBuzz.com. And we do have 6 more weeks of winter, wonderfully. All right, let's talk about what we were talking about before we went live. The report that came out yesterday, I think it was Sports Business Journal, said that the viewership on ESPN and TNT was down. What was it? 22%.
22%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now I know that it got a little bit of a mention in the press box in Toronto last night. I don't know what the viewership ratings are in Canada. I'm assuming that they're pretty much static because, Canada is a hockey loving country, but Kev, this is a concern, and some people are trying to sort of, tamp it down in terms of how serious it is. But I think it could be serious.
I think it is, just because this year in particular, I have been annoyed, been Mike Jello-esque about the fact that I don't always know where to find the game I'm looking for. Is it ESPN? Is it TNT? And I know it's a simple process in order to figure it out, but usually I'm tuning in for a 7:00 game at 6:59 and 51 seconds. And then when I go to where I hope it is and it's not there, or even if I'm watching the local team, and then I go and I find, well, it's not there. It's got to be on ESPN. And then is it on ESPN or is it on ESPN Plus?
Right.
And ESPN Plus, even if you have it, your sign in goes away, and then you've suddenly got to play with your television and get it. And it's, the whole thing has become complicated by that, and it's hard to know. And I've visited my family members, and I want to watch the game, and then discover they don't have ESPN Plus, or I can't get my log into work, because of where I'm at or what the. So I think all that has played a factor. I think there's a frustration level. It just isn't as easy. It just isn't as easy as it was when it was on the NBC, affiliate channel. So
it's kind of like a perfect storm. There's that. There's time of games. Like, there really should be no varying from 7:00, because again, once you start playing around with it and games start going off at 7:10, 7:15, 7:18,
7:30,
you inevitably lose audiences, and people do get annoyed by that. And even the 8:00 games, fans don't show up for a lot of times, especially if it's during the week and it's a work week, and you can't expect them to stay up until 11:00 to watch a hockey game, a regular season game. It's not going to happen. So you have those two things, and then the staggered times that they don't have for games is like another thing. And that's something that we've always talked about, is how the NHL seems to refuse to stagger times, especially like on these weekend games and on other days too.
Well, yesterday there were two games. One was on NHL Network. The other one was on TNT. And for some reason, both of them started at 7:30. Now you'd think they'd stagger it. Have one start, right? It'd have one start at 7, one start at 7:30. So if somebody wanted to watch both games, like while one's in the intermission, you could go to the other one. But they started, and nobody at the game knew why it started at 7:30. I mean, NHL Network usually doesn't dictate times, and it was on Sportsnet in Canada, and they usually want games started at 7. So it was bizarre. And why does TNT want the game at 7:30 so they can have a half hour for the pregame? I don't get it. I mean, sport like hockey
runs into 7:05. Like, I don't know.
I mean, Hockey Night in Canada does their pregame at 6:30 and starts the game at 7:00.
I wonder whether the television world needs to redefine prime time.
Mm-hmm.
And I say that because we used to get Monday Night Football at 9:00 because they wanted to push that into the news and all that kind of stuff. Right. Well, I don't think that's how we operate anymore in the United States of America. I don't think people, are going to go in, looking forward to the 11:00 news. They, watch the news and go to bed. I think a lot of people are going to bed, as Russ said, 10:00.
Yeah, I mean, the world is the world. You still have to get up in the morning and be able to get to work. And the thing about it is, when you're watching a game, sometimes you could hang on and wait for it because it's that kind of matchup. But that extra half hour is a killer, and an hour is definitely a killer. And again, you can't always let these channels dictate when the start of your games are.
And-
like, you have to have a happy medium there, and you have to have some consistency. And the thing about the not staggering the games, like Mike said, if I am paying for a pay service, I should be able to watch all the games if I want to, or at least most of all of them. And you don't have a prayer when they start at the same time. Like,
And-
now all of a sudden I've got to pick and choose which period I want to watch or whatever. I might want to watch them all, but now I can't.
And I know I'm screaming into the void when it comes to this, because a lot of people complain. And Russ, you know about this, being in the New York area, or be close to the New York area, where they deal with like different cable companies carrying different things. And the blackout rule. I mean, the NFL finally did away with the blackout rule a few years ago, because they were going to sell tickets no matter what. And there was always this thing, Kev, in Buffalo, where they had to get to like 75,000 seats. They had an 80,000 seat stadium, and there was always this rush, and some business had to buy up 5,000 tickets at the last minute to get to lift the blackout. And now there is no blackout. But if you go to ESPN Plus, and I'm watching a game, and I want to check in on the Sabres in St. Louis, and like if somebody doesn't have local MSG on their TV, you can't watch it because it's blacked out. You're paying $99. They increased the money for ESPN Plus this weekend. I just got a notice, $99 up from $69. You're paying $100, and you can't watch a team that's in your own time. I know you're driving traffic. You want to drive traffic to watching on cable, but just let it be available for everybody. I don't get it.
Yeah, I mean, I think the NFL is in a different, world, because, their television revenue is so great that, they're not worried so much about,
They don't care.
not going
They just don't care. They don't have to care.
No, where, we're still a gate revenue driven league. We saw that in the pandemic of how much revenue was lost when we couldn't play games. And so, I know, I get it. I know what they're trying to do, but I agree with Mike that it's very confusing, and it's aggravating, because you just want to watch your team, whatever team it is.
You know what the other thing is too, Kevin? This has been something that has really gotten on fans have gotten mad about, and I get it. And they're talking about it in the chat room. When you are watching on the pay service for NHL TV, those kinds of services, they're not showing you post game. They're not showing you your local post game, and fans do want to see that. They want to see their players interviewed. They want to get that. I don't understand why that can't be worked out.
Well, okay, ESPN Plus, I have noticed they will carry some of it. They will carry but like, okay, when I had the NHL Center Ice package on my cable, and first of all, they only devoted like 9 channels. So, if it was a light night, 9 or 10 channels, if it was a light night, you would get the home and away broadcast for each game. But if there were 9 or 10 games, they would only carry one. And of course, like they always shortchanged for like an American customer. You always got, like, it was Nashville, Toronto. You'd always get the Nashville broadcast. And, me covering the Leafs, I wanted the Toronto broadcast because it was more Leaf centric. But, the one nice thing about ESPN Plus is they give you get the option of either one of the broadcasts. You can watch Toronto or Nashville, or you can flip flop between them. That's a nice thing. But the one thing, Kevin, you were saying about being able to find the game, the way I go to the NHL app, and it has what broadcast it's like on each game.
Yeah, I know that it's simple. I'm just saying it's a step that you don't want to take,
Right.
because you're usually scrambling or you're running late, and
One-stop shop.
Yeah, and it's, I can find it quickly, but and it's really not that hard. Yet the other issue is too that it's almost like the NHL refuses to pay homage. That the vast majority, I wouldn't want to put a number on it, of people who get the subscription service do it not because they're fans of the sport, because they're living out of town and want to see their team.
Right.
And they never pay homage to that. Like, it's just like, like the blackouts shouldn't matter to you, but they do, because that's why you pay the whole fee,
Right.
because you want to see your specific team.
There are plenty of fans that tune out after they're eliminated from playoff.
Yeah,
from the playoffs and don't watch the Stanley Cup. There's plenty of that.
I would love to know the percentage of fans that just watch their team and, maybe a handful of other games. I don't think there are a bunch of people. I mean, there will be some, but a bunch of people that sit around every night watching 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 hockey games. They're tuning in for their team. That's why they bought the subscription. So Russ is absolutely right. And what happens is oftentimes the networks are trying to get to another game, the second game of a doubleheader, so they cut off the interviews, and it's really irritating for people who are only concerned about that one game. So
now I know this is not going to go over as well, but because it's a little negative, but I also think like in some other sports, fans, I think even casual fans do tune in to see like Charles Barkley on the pregame, and we'll watch games because those guys will be around to comment. With hockey, I think that some of that exists with TNT, because I do think, even though I'm not a Bissonnette fan, that he keeps people engaged, beats and all of that. They put way more of an effort into their pre and post than ESPN does. ESPN's guys literally just show up. They show you old video of old players, and it's not a slight on Chelios and Messier, because they could do a lot more with them if they wanted to, but they continue to go back on old highlights and live in the past, where at least TNT is letting their viewers engage in the broadcast. Yeah. They're reading off tweets. They're doing things. To me, they make more of an effort. I don't know what you guys feel, but that's just my feeling from watching both.
Cal, I agree. Like with TNT, even though I don't agree with it sometimes, there's a lot more emphasis on insight into the game from guys like Bissonnette or Anson Carter or whoever's on the panel. Wayne Gretzky, but with ESPN, it's like Barry Melrose and to a lesser extent, Chelios and Messier. Yeah, they don't offer me anything, and I go to Hockey Night in Canada, and I get Jen Botterill and Kevin Bieksa and Elliot and their Kelly Rudy is really good. They give a lot of insight, and the TSN crew too. And I know that they do it a lot more, but yeah, I think ESPN needs to step up their game a little bit.
Yeah, here's my take on all that. I think we do. There's no comparison between the two networks. I think the TNT learned from their basketball experience that personalities matter, and they do. And I think there are people who do tune in for that, but I don't think it's a determining factor in overall. I think people just are more interested in what happens during the game. But it clearly has some factor, or they wouldn't. Take so much time and care and trying to figure out to get the right guy. So, if you're going to do it right all the way through, including the pregame show. I mean, I know when NBC had it, they discovered that people would tune in to if you had insiders on, like before the trade deadline, right. for the month before the trade deadline. If you had Bob McKenzie or Darren Dreger or somebody come in and had all that, that was stuff people wanted. That did make an impact when you can provide, information that fans like, and everybody loves trade deadline being like Christmas morning. So, but I do think it is a factor. I just don't think it's a major factor. I don't think that's a determining factor on whether or not you like the coverage or not.
Yeah, and I know that because obviously I listen and watch TSN, being in a border city, that they used to fly Drager and Bob McKenzie to Stamford, Connecticut, so they could be in their studio.
Right.
Instead, and I think that they thought that was important rather than just doing a satellite feed from Toronto or something like that. So,
well, that's the point. Now we have to bring that up. So the loss of NBC was something. And we weren't sure how they were going to stack up. Everybody wanted ESPN, but we also did lose Bob McKenzie, Kevin. in that deal, and that he is ratings. Like what Mike is saying actually does matter in the sense that maybe NBC on its own doesn't pull in as good a ratings, or maybe they pull in the same, but they did make that extra effort on those other things for those other segments, and that did matter.
Well, the other thing that's lost is what made NBC so worthwhile for the hockey community was their enthusiasm for the project.
Yes.
Like they were dedicated, like hockey was their thing. Like, you knew, I mean, the criticism of ESPN last time around, you never knew where their post-game show was going to be. No. And you never knew what time it was going to start. There was no consistency. Sometimes it was on, sometimes it wasn't. You just never know. They treated it like a second-class citizen.
Oh,
and,
please.
Yeah, and then NBC obviously made the hockey fans feel warm and fuzzy, that every night you knew what was happening. There was a pregame show, there was a postgame show. You got to know all the
postgame would go for like an hour, not like ESPN's is quick. It's like 10 minutes.
Yeah, I know. I mean, so that's what was lost, is sort of the homey feel that NBC cared about us, cared about the sport. They were all about it. And, we're kind of back to the network where, it's basketball, it's football, it's baseball, it's amateur sports, it's bowling. Oh, yeah. And there's hockey.
And that was the concern I had before they negotiated, going back to ESPN, that the NHL would be considered a second-class citizen. And really, they're being put like the Premier League is on Peacock to drive traffic to their online site. The NHL is primarily, other than 1 or 2 games a week, on ESPN Plus, and that's great for ESPN that they have something that they can drive traffic to. But for the game, I don't think it's great. What helps is constant, consistent exposure, and they're not.
And I will say this: there was a thought, Kev. And we saw it, that ESPN Plus needed something to fill the content gap that they had on it. And that's where they looked at the NHL for. But Mike's right. Short of just getting the money, it doesn't help. It doesn't seem to be helping the sport.
Sorry,
I was just going to agree. I completely agree with you. So,
and I wonder, and it's only starting, but we're going to see it more and more, how much, in terms of the quality of the broadcast, the fact that some of these networks are not sending crews to the games, that they're doing they're doing games from studios in Stamford or in Toronto or whatever. There is something about being in the building and being able to see things. You can't see everything on a monitor, and you lose something. And I think that hurts.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it just speaks to the economics of television. They're all kind of going through that now. So
now, okay, we're past the halfway mark of the season. It's about, and most teams are at like 48, 49, 50 games. So just right now the Bruins, I think, are up by 13 points in the standings for the President's Trophy. Looking at
they're up 7.
Well, it's 13 over Toronto in second place.
Yeah.
But that's right. There's 7 over
Carolina.
Thank you.
There are other teams other than Toronto, Mike.
Well, I don't know about that, Russ. But in looking at the scoring race right now, Kev, the gap is just as wide in the scoring race as it is in the race for the President's Trophy, because Connor McDavid is up by 16 points over Draisaitl.
Yeah, I mean, it's not quite Gretzky and Lemieux but in this modern world where there are more teams and more players, that's still fairly significant. He's just miles ahead. But we've seen a lot of fun things from the individuals. Like right now, Sebastian Aho is in a 6-game goal scoring streak. He has 9 goals in that, and during that period, Carolina has actually made up some ground against Boston. That's why they're only 7 points, and 7 points, and they played exactly the same game, so it's a legitimate 7 points. So, I mean, I don't know whether they'll catch Boston, but they're knocking at the door, and I think that kind of we've had other instances where players have gotten hot. I mean, look at the number of goals that Bo Horvat has already. Jack Hughes has increased his scoring significantly as well, and there's been a lot of buzz. So people say, I'm always amused when people say, oh, I don't need goals. Give me a good defensive game. I'll say, sports do need.
No, you need the offense. There's
they do, and people like that. I think it's because of it, it's a more interesting season when you've got and the number of comebacks too has been really remarkable. And I think I saw the other day that Carolina gave up an empty net goal and then came from behind and still won the game. Like, holy cow, we've had just all kinds of things happen. You see 3-goal leads evaporate. So and all of that is about the individual players that we have. They're putting up incredible feats. Yeah,
the one thing with Carolina, the reason this year, the main reason I picked them to come out of the East was because of Brent Burns, and he's on a seven-game scoring streak himself, and that is an element where they really didn't have a dynamic offensive defenseman other than Dougie Hamilton, but they also didn't have one as well-rounded as Brent Burns, where he's not only can do that, but he's physical, but he can do a little bit of everything, and he's made a big difference on that team.
Yeah, you're right. I just by coincidence, I just happened to have talked to Don Waddell yesterday about, and he brought up that very subject that you did, that the impact of Burns on the team, like he's a very popular guy already, and he makes a difference in so many different aspects of the game. He's a beastly player. He's big. He's hard to move. He's offensive. Yeah, he can eat minutes. He's just a really remarkable player, and he really is happy in Carolina.
That's the thing. I got to interview him before he got there, and I could tell he was like really looking forward to it. And so I knew at that point the impact was going to be great. Like old Brent Burns, and it is.
I hate to use this term, but that's how when I've heard him speak, he sounds like a guy who's been paroled.
Right.
He's just happy with the freedom to play on a good team and to do the kind of things that matter in terms of winning. So they're very happy there about the way things are going. And, their numbers offensively are decent. They're in the top 10, and they're defensively, they're in the top 3. So,
and they're in a position with the Pacioretty injury because of LTIR that they can add a player, and that's going to be add a player of significance because they're in
a good spot. Like if they stay healthy like they are right now, we can't count Pacioretty anymore because he never really was a factor.
Right.
They're dangerous. They're a dangerous team.
But they do count Pacioretty because they were counting on him. So I mean that was when they looked at last year and what they wanted to do, they thought they needed a little more scoring.
Yeah,
well, I do believe that there'll be, if the Red Wings decide to trade Dylan Larkin, and that's still a big if. And I say that because there's been no indication, and I've talked to numerous people about that they've even solicited or taken in any offers on him. Like they haven't even gone to that direction for us. So if
they have time, like they don't have to.
Yeah, no, that's right. So, and the difference between now, I mean, from my understanding and my reporting, it's $700,000, 8.2, 8.9. So they've narrowed the gap. They're in there, like.
But that's for 8 years, so it does add up.
Yeah, that's $5.6 million over 8 years.
Right.
Now, but if they each went to the middle, if you went to 8.4 or 8.5, it's a lot less than that. I mean, it seems like a pretty obvious, compromise.
Right.
But
can't they just go in the middle and give them a Little Caesars franchise? Like, didn't they used to do that?
Well, they used to do that. Yeah, Brad Park ended up with one, and I know there's a lot of guys. But anyway, The important aspect of this in terms of comparables, because, you always hear those terms comparables, but, the last two of the last three signings of centers were Hintz at 8.4 and Barzal at 9.1. So if you put Larkin in between those two, you can argue that the Matthew Barzal was a overpayment, but if you put him between the two, like, that seems fair to me.
Yeah.
So
No, it seems fair. I will say this, because I did read your article, Kev, and the one thing that I would say, my one hot take is, if they have to trade Larkin, they're never going to be able to recoup what he has meant to that team. Never.
For sure. And here's the other reason why I think they won't do it. The Tigers are taking a step back again. A rebuilding team, it almost feels like they're starting over again.
Which is crazy.
The Little Caesars, they've got a new general manager, a modern analytical guy. I'm speaking about the Tigers. Yeah. And it feels like they're going to be worse next year. Even though at one point everybody thought they had a number of good young pitchers, and they had Torkelson and Green in the outfield, the young player there, everybody was a guy. Well, they feel like they're taking a step backward with this new guy starting over, and now if they move out Larkin, like, they're not even close yet to being done with this rebuild now. If you move out Larkin, who's the catalyst of their offense and their team captain and the most popular player, homegrown talent, even went to the University of Michigan for a year, like, it feels like they're taking a step and a half back.
I know it's unlikely, but it has happened in the past when it came to somebody like Keith Kachuk. I mean, is there any possibility that they deal Larkin and then they go after him in the summer, or do you think it's they're burning their bridge if they trade him?
I think they're burning the bridge, because I think Larkin will resign somewhere, And I haven't heard that Columbus would be interested in him now, but I have heard that they would be interested if he's a free agent this summer. So, because Werenski and Larkin are close friends. It's not, Columbus is only from my house, it's 3 hours and 18 minutes. So it's not that far a drive. So all of his family and friends can get down to Columbus. So yeah, it's mind boggling that this is dragged out, because if there was ever a guy that you would think, because he wants to resign here, he's been very public about that. This is his town. He knows everybody. He's popular. His family's still here. There's 100 million reasons for him to want. He grew up rooting for the Ravens, and he's not he's not Austin Matthews. He's not Jack Eichel,
right?
But he's pretty darn good. And so for them not to have him signed, I think, I would write that it would be a mistake if they let him go. Now, I guess you'd have to look and see what the return is. Right. So.
The other team reportedly, and since I was at the game last night, is Boston, that supposedly has inquired about Larkin. And if I looking at that team, Kev, I mean, you've got
not enough for them to give you for Dylan Larkin.
But hold for that. It's like, I don't know where you put him. I mean, he's what I'm saying? It's like, you've got Bergeron as your number one center. You've got Krejci as your number two. I suppose you could move Coyle from center to the wing on the third line, but that's an awful big luxury to have Dylan Larkin as your third line center. Maybe you move Krejci down to the third line because he's a little older, but it seems like a big luxury for the Bruins. And as Russ said, it's like, I don't know, unless you're talking about like Lysell and a first round.
Not enough. None of that is enough. The Bruins.
It's a rental, though.
No, it's not a rental. I mean, the Bruins. I think if the Bruins want him, he's a replacement for Bergeron / Krejci.
A roster player and firsts and things like that, and a first and whatever, another player. You can't accept a Lysell. They don't have a prospect good enough to say, that'll help bridge the gap on this deal. They don't. The Bruins, you can't.
Yeah, I mean, if you read Jimmy Murphy's good article from Boston, he basically said that Lysell, the Canucks, were not interested. Yeah. But really, I did hear from a really good source that for the Horvat trade, it was all about how early in the draft can I get a pick in the 2023.
Yeah.
And, even though, for example, that they're getting, a top 12 protected first rounder from the Islanders, it's still a pretty good pick and a really good draft.
I said on another show, if I could pick between 13 and 15, and I can go deeper than that, I'll be really happy, and I might be able to get somebody as good as Horvat.
They basically told the other teams, look, that's what we're looking for, and they just couldn't compete. That Boston was in on it, Carolina was in on it. There were other teams in on it, but they couldn't compete with the Islanders. So who had,
And just so you know, Ratu gave a different pronunciation of his name that day, but he actually said it doesn't matter. He let everybody off the hook by saying it didn't matter. Another thing that I brought up, Kev, on the show I do, Locked On Flyers, is I was looking at the Flyers compared to other teams in that mushy middle, which right now the Red Wings are a part of. And if you take Larkin out of that, then they're back where, 2 steps backwards, where right now, teams that are close to getting out of that mushy middle are the Red Wings, are the Sabres. Like they're getting closer to getting out. But you do this with Larkin, it's going to take you 2 more years to get out, even if all the prospects kick in at the right time.
Yeah, it's interesting. If you take the teams like the Ottawa Senators, the Buffalo Sabres, and the Red Wings as 3 teams that are all kind of in rebuilding, I think I like the Sabres, that group better, just because.
I do too. I give them the edge.
Detroit has Seider and Edvinsson, but, they've got Dahlin, who's obviously a little more farther along the track. But, up front, Quinn, Tage Thompson, and even Dylan Cousins has really come along.
He's coming on.
And in Detroit, you got Lucas Raymond, and you got Larkin, who's still like 26. And Rasmussen, a lot of people don't realize this, but the Red Wings are in love with Rasmussen. And
he's had a really good year. I've been watching him. He's really good.
He's not what they had hoped he was when they drafted him, but he has been willing. He basically says, what do you want me to do? Yeah. And when they tell him, he does it.
Yeah, but I will say this. He is scoring now, not in the fashion that you would have hoped, but his shot has come back. Like his confidence has come back. And at least I'm happy to see, like he scored a goal the other day that I was like, you know what?
Yeah.
That is what Rasmussen used to do. And then had to go this roundabout way to sort of get to be able to do it again.
Yeah. He's been hot in the last couple of games, but he's on a pace for 13 goals.
Yeah.
He's not, it doesn't appear like he's
could reach 20. You could make the argument.
Yeah. If they get 20 out of him, Russ, they'll be thrilled.
Yeah. They're going to get 20, I think.
He hasn't shown that ability, but
sorry.
And I don't mean this year. It could be next year he gets 20.
Yeah. Maybe he'll get it one time, but his shot isn't very hard.
Yeah.
So, he's worked on that. But what he's really worked on, and, they've asked him last year, they asked him specifically, and they had Mark Stahl on the team. So that was beneficial. They said, be Jordan Stahl for us.
Yeah.
And he has worked at that. He's more physical. He kills penalties. He plays big. And, he shows a little bit of offensive flair. He goes to the goal, net front presence. He's done all that. It just hasn't translated into numbers. But they really love it.
That has hurt. You're right about this with Zadina not filling his shoes. This is the only part that's hurt the rebuild of the Red Wings is their best prospects out of the draft are mostly defensive. And then, like you said, it's Raymond, and they haven't been able to get that next guy. Valeno's hasn't been that next. They don't have that next guy.
And the Sabres have another level, like after the guys that we just mentioned, they have Kulich and they have Rosen and they have
Kulich is really come on. Yeah.
Right. So they have guys in the pipeline who are 18 or 19 years old who in a couple of years will be pushing for jobs. And and so I mean, they have the ability, and that's getting back to like trade deadline and rumors. They have the ability with their stockpile of picks, prospects, and guys in the pipeline to make a Timo Meyer deal or to make a deal for something that would affect this year. But I still get the feeling, Kev, that it's sort of, if they're within a point or two of the playoffs, then maybe they do that. And if not, they're just going to continue to stick with the plan that they have.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I watched Boston or Buffalo a little bit last night. Do we know what the extent of Tage Thompson's injury is?
It's enough that he's not playing in the All-Star game. So Rasmus Dahlin is going to Florida to replace him. But I didn't hear an update of how serious it is, whether he'll be out long term.
Yeah, though that doesn't really mean anything. A large hangnail can get you out of the
right. I mean, here's the thing that everybody's bringing up, though. Like, so it says, the Sabres should trade for Thatcher Demko. And, and I dug into this, and there does seem to be some truth that, yes, he is unhappy there, but also the Canucks don't have to move him. They could really have Rick Tocchet try and smooth things over first. It's not like, I don't think they're rushing out to trade Thatcher Demko, even if he's attainable. I still think it would take a boatload to do it.
It will, and the Canucks should not trade him. Like, I don't know why they're thinking. Yeah, you got a young goalie who is on the stardom track. You don't move him because it's hard to get those. But
I don't get unless there's just a personal thing going on that he wants out. I mean, he's had injury problems. They'd be sort of trading from a position of weakness if they traded him before the deadline because he's been hurt for a long time. Maybe it's a summer deal, but they would have to get a goalie back in a deal to make any kind of sense.
Which is also hard to do. Like, what team is going to trade you a goalie back? Like, if you trade, like, let's say with Pittsburgh, you get Tristan Jarry back, but Jarry, while he has hung around the Stanley Cup and has been on a cup-winning team, he didn't get to play. You're not going to get a goalie that quality back. Like,
well, I mean. If it's a team like New Jersey, then a guy like Blackwood is part of the deal. If it's a team like Buffalo, then Luukkonen is part of the deal.
I'll even tell you, even if they traded with Detroit and got Kosa, you still have to wait on Kosa because you don't really know. Like,
Kosa's 20 years old and played 25 pro games. So.
Right. Or Wallstat with Minnesota, or Askarov with Nashville.
Wallstat would be like maybe one of the closer guys where you'd say, all right, maybe he could play next year, but you still, like, you don't know, and you already know what Demko could do. So the best bet is to try and turn that relationship around, and sometimes a new coach can do that. That's my recommendation. Speaking
of Askarov, the other night he lost a 2-1 decision to Alex Nedeljkovic of the Red Wings. And in that game, the Grand Rapids Griffins won 2-1 with Soderblom and Verano, who started the season with the Red Wings, scoring the goals, and Nedeljkovic as the number one star. He, of course, started with the Red Wings as well. Yeah. So it read more like a Red Wings win than a.
Well, now, Ted, what is going to happen with Verano? Because he has gotten hot, and everybody knows he can score goals. Like, what is the future of him?
Yeah, well, I mean, he's only got 4 goals this year down in the minors. It feels like Steve Yzerman is really down on him. And I think it had to do with the attitude about, going into the program. So, I mean, we're going to see. I mean, I would assume what we're assuming is they'll try to trade him in the offseason. It feels like he's done in Detroit. I just don't feel like they feel good about the way things went. So we will see, what happens. He has been better. I think you're accurate in that, but he has not been good. So we'll see. He's gotten 2 goals in the last 2 games, but that's only 4 for the season down there. And, he's played I think 12, 13 games, something like that. So
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
Much to Tony Soprano's dismay, Anton Khudobin is not the first name that rolls off the lips of teams that are supposedly looking for goaltending before the deadline. I just heard Elliot Friedman talking about the potential of Vemelka from Arizona being somebody that could be moved if a team matches Bill Armstrong's price. And I think the fact that he's got a over 900 save percentage with a bad Arizona team, that he's under cost control, I think, for 2 more years at less than $3 million.
Yeah, but are you getting him for a playoff run? No.
Yeah. Well,
Russ, you're assuming that if it's a team that has questionable goaltending, maybe they think Vemelka is an upgrade over that goaltending.
It's hard you can't even gauge that because it's like he's never played in the playoffs.
I agree.
He's young in this league. And Armstrong is always asking for the moon. I can't give the moon for a guy with 0 playoff experience. I just can't.
But we're talking, depending on the team that we're talking about, it could have a team.
All right, let's say it's even the Penguins, right? The Penguins are worried about Tristan Jarry. It's a big thing. I'll be writing about it for Full Press. It's a thing. But even they don't know what to do yet, whether they're going to have to make a deal or whatever. But I could tell you, they probably wouldn't even give up major assets for Vemelka. They probably would still look for somebody with playoff experience, even if Vemelka is the better goalie, simply because it's hard to pull that off, to have a guy who's never done it and let that be the guy to lead all your veterans. Because I think Kevin knows, when the veterans watch a goalie and if he doesn't have it in the playoffs, it's the worst thing for the team. They just
and they alter the games. They don't play confidently. They don't play with the same style. They adjust their game accordingly. Yeah. I will throw this out there, and I have not done it. I should have, but I don't really like the Red Wings are sellers, so it doesn't really kind of impact me. But he said he is surprised no one has done it yet. He said, but you guys will all be shocked. He said, all those that are talking about all these players being moved, go and take the number of players are available. Go ahead and take 50% of their deal, and then look at it in comparison to the number of dollars available. Right. And he said, you will suddenly discover, and I said to him, well, we pointed this out on our last thing. There are not enough teams to take all the players.
Right.
When the music stops, some very big time players, he says, are going to be left without a chair. He said, it's not a given that Patrick Kane and Taves and O'Reilly and all those guys are going to go, simply because there's not enough teams.
Yeah, and you know what, Kevin? In a way, I'm happy to hear that, because I was on another show where I said, for James Van Riemsdyk, really good player, I said, maybe they get a conditional second or third, probably not even a second this year, which is what they need. And, there was some question about it. And I was like, and I'm talking about they have to retain half of his salary just to even get that. Right. They have to retain half. That's like in the equation. It's non-negotiable.
And and Van Riemsdyk may or may not go. I've heard a lot of chatter about him. I think he's going to go, but somebody has to go. He said, if you look at it, it's just an impossibility. Right. He said, he said, but he says, nobody says that. Nobody says, they talk as if, Kane's going to go, this guy's going to go, this guy's going to go. And they can't all go. There's not enough money. So.
Right. And it's all conditional on, teams like Arizona, Anaheim, Buffalo being mixed in as third parties.
Yeah. No, he said the same thing. He said that's counting that as well. So
right. And unless all of a sudden we're going to see a whole slew of hockey deals, meaning salary for salary.
I do think we're going to see some of those.
Yeah.
Yeah, we will.
I think the Flyers, as an example, will be a team willing to make those hockey deals because they're not admitting a rebuild.
Right.
And I think they're a team that would do that, looking for specific things, as an example, Travis Konecny, right? Really good player, having a really good year. But he's only got 2 more years on his deal. Mm-hmm. They may look at the tea leaves and another team may say, hey, we could win with Konecny now. We'll give you this guy who's got more term, a little less money, or even the same money. And that's something where the Flyers really have to consider that, especially if they could get their second-round pick back.
Yeah.
And also, you might be able to.
A GM told me that Kevin Hayes is also in play because of that.
It's not a tougher one, though, with his term, though.
It is tougher, but there is a great need for centers. So.
Provorov, if we believe.
They have to believe he can play
He
center.
said Provorov is not going to move.
They have to believe he can play center, Kev, because Torts is not playing him at center anymore.
No, I know, but some people do. So
yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So, but I'm with you. Too much term. Like people want term, but not that many years.
No, not that much. But is a good thing. Like you get him, you got this playoff run, and you had 2 more years at 5 point whatever. Like that's good for the player that he is.
Yeah.
I said if you're the Flyers, unless you're projecting yourself to be a winner next year or the year after, you're having to sign him for 7 years at $7.5, $8 million.
But the interesting thing here is, like, for example, I was sort of sniffing around what was going on with the Bruins because we expect, them being in the position that they are in, that they would want to add, and maybe they do want to add. But I talked to somebody who covers the Bruins, and they said, well, they would have to move out a Craig Smith or a Mike Riley. Both of them make over $3 million to be able to make a kind of move that, I don't know if it's Larkin or something else. Okay, good luck. I mean, who's going to take a $3 million salary off your hands? That's the problem.
Yeah, but I think the fact that they're trying to move 2 threes as opposed to 1 6 or 7 makes it a little more reasonable. Like you can move a $3 million salary, so they could go to. Now the problem is you got to give up assets in order to get that done. So moving 2 salaries will cost you more assets, but it's a little easier than moving one $7 million player. So
now the one thing I learned and I talked to a bunch of people, and I obviously I keep my ear to the ground when it comes to Toronto. There's been a lot of talk about teams wanting a guy like Matthew Nyes. I picked up on nothing that indicated that they were willing to trade a top end prospect like him in a deal, especially with what we expect to be a buyer's market, like we were just talking about. Now the interesting thing here is the price for guys like Meyer or Kane or all the guys at the top level are going to be so, at least right now, the price is so high that I don't think Toronto will be willing to pay that price. Now, if a Bertuzzi is less, there's a name that Russ and I talked about, and about a month ago, and then I talked to somebody else yesterday, and they said they heard the same name, which was Maxime Comtois from the Anaheim Ducks.
Yeah,
okay,
I would be very much in favor of that.
He's not having a particularly great year, but he's a big left winger. He's physical. He's under control. He's a restricted free agent with arb rights. That's somebody you get for a draft pick. That's more along the lines of what I think Toronto may do, because they don't want to mess with the chemistry of the current club. And, they might be able to finagle their way along with LTIR or something like that. But I think that type of move is more likely than the big swing that everybody's talking about.
This is the conundrum, Kev, and I heard it on last night's broadcast. So really at this point, the Toronto market has basically said Kyle Dubas should go all in, and they're using every name in the book. Timo Meier, every top guy in the book. Yeah. Just give them whatever they want, basically do it. And the problem is we know that there's probably a 25% chance they advance in the playoffs this year based on the fact that we know who they're going to play and previous success. So how in the world can you go all in when there's a very good chance you're going to lose, and then you could be screwing up your future? You want to be able to reload for next year and have a chance again, and you can't do that if you go all in to just go one round in the playoffs. Like, that's it. You're going to reload to go one round and the hope you can go further, where I think they can look at the landscape and realize it would be a long shot for them to get to the Eastern Conference Final.
And let me add to that before you answer this, Kev. Okay, Kyle Dubas may be in a situation where if he doesn't win a round in this playoffs, he's going to lose his job. If he goes out at the deadline and sells all in and trades Matthew Nyes and trades their first-round pick, that affects his reputation in the league going forward. If he wants to get a new job and a job someplace else, I think doing something like that and sort of bankrupting that franchise as you go out the door affects him being able to get another job. So I don't think he's going to do that. I think he's going to be prudent and try to improve the team, but I don't think he's going to sell out completely and empty the coffers.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many different layers to look at this. I mean, you could argue that if they could get by the first round, they could win it all. that first round matchup is a psychological.
Let's say you got Tampa and Carolina waiting. Like, I don't know.
I mean, I get it. But
Yeah.
I'm just saying, if you can just get by, I mean, they're capable of beating those teams. I mean, they are. But, is it likely? No, but it's not, it's not impossible. And I don't think the odds are horrible. Like, it's not like the Detroit Red Wings are trying to, doing that. This is a really good team, and defensively they played well. So, I mean, I do think they have to do something. I do think there is a greater understanding now around the league that you got to do what you got to do to make your team competitive. So I don't know that it will hurt Kyle Dubas's reputation. I think they'll look and say, look, he fed that system. He made that team. I mean, people view the Maple Leafs as a good team. They don't sort of go beyond.
No, they're a good team. I mean, there's no doubt.
Yeah, no, they are a good team, and they understand they haven't won, and they know there's something that's some mental issue that's causing them problems. So I don't know that he's got to worry too much about that. I do think they're going to do something though, because I think that, yeah, and I do think before it was all defense. But I know Mike said the other day, and I agree with this, that, I mean, I've watched them, and they're pretty impressive defensively right now. Like,
Timothy Liljegren has been a great
they suddenly have sort of found their –
they waited on him. They
So,
over-marinated him, and it's worked out.
Sorry, go ahead, Kev.
well, the final thing I was going to say is I think they're going to have to do it, though, because they're going to react. Carolina's going to make a move. Boston's going to make a move. I think Tampa Bay is going to make a move. I mean, they have no – cap space, but for example, why wouldn't they go after Tyler Bertuzzi? Blashill won an AHL championship with them. You take half that money, you're a $2 million player. Anybody can add a $2 million player.
Right.
You could figure out how to do that. So
supposedly the next Brandon Hagel at this deadline, I heard them talking about was Sam Lafferty from the Blackhawks, who's making $1.1 million.
He doesn't have the offensive ability.
I know, and people ripped on Hagel at the deadline, and he's got
but he had some offense in his game. Like,
I know, I mean, maybe Lafferty's a bottom six guy, but I'm saying he fits in terms of the salary and his age and things of that nature. But just want to finish off with this because the news came down yesterday. Mark Stone having another back surgery, out indefinitely. And the anticipation here, Kev, is that this is going to spring Kelly McCrimmon into action before the deadline, because now you put Stone's, I think, $9 million salary on LTIR, and more than likely he's out for the rest of the regular.
Oh, he's out for the year. You don't get back surgery and come back. It's not this year.
Yeah, no, unless it's just one of those, minor back surgeries.
Right.
So I mean, could you see a Tarasenko or something like that?
Yeah, I did hear yesterday that by the way, I did hear that despite the fact that I didn't believe that O'Reilly was going to be on the block, that they've kind of crossed that bridge, and he is.
Yeah, we're not shocked at that.
No.
Yeah, no, you guys thought he would. I just thought it didn't make any sense to me because I didn't realize that the Blues were giving up. But I am told that they have discussed. But the problem is Armstrong, I'm told, wants way too much for everybody. So, right now, we're a long way. But I do think bringing Vegas in, adds another team.
Yeah.
And, they're going to have money because Stone's going to be there. So they'll get one of the bigger players. I don't think there's any doubt about that. Because
Vegas has to be careful. Like, they're going to bankrupt their farm system, too.
What farm system?
I know.
Yeah. No, that's right.
Another issue.
Yeah, they are going to do that. But they are going to go for it. You got an older owner, he's not worried about 2037, or 35.
He's not worried about 2026, really. I mean,
yeah.
So we should say that Brandon Brisson should rent a Ryder truck pretty soon, because he'll probably be going someplace else.
I just saw a picture. I follow him on Instagram. He's happy. He's got his Golden Knights jersey on. May not be for long.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Good show, guys. We'll be back tomorrow with another edition of the Hockey Buzzcast. For Kevin Allen, for Russ Cohen, I'm Michael Agello. Thank you for watching. And remember, without the buzz, it's just hockey.